President Obama is bringing the president of South Korea today to an auto plant in Michigan. They are highlighting the potential benefits of a new trade agreement signed this week that they claim will increase U.S. exports by $11 billion and support 70,000 jobs while opening Korea's markets to American goods. Ambassador Ron Kirk is the U.S. trade representative and is, of course, traveling with the president today in Orion, Michigan. Thanks so much, Ambassador. Great to see you. First of all, what are you going to say to these workers? I guess these workers have seen the benefits. This is a Chevy plant, and in this particular plant, they have actually seen the benefits of past trade with Korea. So this is a pretty welcoming audience for your argument.
Well, first of all, Andrea, thanks for having us. And our message to these workers is fairly simple. One, we want to thank the UAW for doing something relatively unprecedented in America as it relates to trade policy over the last 20 years. And that's one, working with us as we sought to renegotiate the Korea trade agreement and make it more balanced, and being willing to take a very courageous stand to say, you know what, we've always said that we wanted a level playing field and fair trade, but when we produced that, the UAW did something no union's done in years, and they endorsed his Korea trade agreement because particularly these workers at this plant know a lot of their livelihood is related to lots of the cars that are made here in particular are sold outside of the United States. And that's what the president spoke to when you recall he gave his job speech when he said, we don't just want to see Kias and Toyotas and Hyundais driven on by college kids here. We want to see these cars sold all across the world and in Korea. And when you do trade right, as we did, when you're willing to stay at the table, fight for a better deal, you can produce that.
Well, what can be said in tangible terms from this new trade deal as to how it might eventually impact Michigan, where the unemployment rate is 11.2%, which is, more than 2 points above the national average?
Well, ultimately, this president put all his chips in the table as it relates to the auto industry 2 years ago when he stood up against Congress and said, we're not going to let the American auto industry die. And we now see an industry that's coming back, but we see an industry that's adding jobs because we're gaining market share in the U.S., but also because we realize we have the ability to create jobs in America by selling to new consumers, whether they're in Mexico, Korea, Asia, Africa. And we just want to have an industry that's strong enough that if they make the corporate decision they want to sell in these markets, the trade policy doesn't get in the way. And I've been to Michigan 4 or 5 times. I've met with everyone from the governor and mayor, and what I heard was that they were frustrated by our trade policy because they didn't feel anybody in Washington was listening. We weren't fighting for them. But Michigan gets trade. A quarter of all our trade with Canada goes across the Ambassador Bridge here in Detroit. What I heard from them, we want a fair shake, we want a level playing field. And part of our message is that we've done that, we believe in them, and we're going to continue to fight to find new markets, new opportunities for these workers, whether they're at this Orion GM plant or whether they're working for Ford or Chrysler, to be able to access these new consumers all around the world.
Ambassador, doesn't the Wall Street protest, though, Occupy Wall Street, say that the policies of the administration are not having the needed effect in terms of creating jobs and dealing with public anger over the economy?
Well, I think the frustration we're seeing, Andrea, not just in Wall Street, but around the country, speaks to, I think, an American public that just questions the overriding notion that's existed, certainly that the Republicans have put forward in terms of economic policy, that if we just take care of those at the top, it'll trickle down. And I think most Americans understand we don't have any problem with big business. Small businesses supply companies like General Motors or Boeing or Ford, but what they want to make sure is we don't forget America's middle-income families. We fight as hard for the working class, for working families, as we're willing to fight for corporate America, and that's been a hallmark of this president. And everything he's done, from the Recovery Act to this American Jobs Act to our trade policy, has been done to recalibrate it in a way that it speaks to the needs of all Americans, and particularly our middle income and working class families.
Ambassador Ron Kirk, thank you very much for joining us. Some good-looking cars behind you there in Orion, Michigan. Thanks so much.